Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. I'm standing up for this episode of Story Sundays because I've been playing so much Destiny 2 in the last week that my back is just destroyed, like I'm super stiff. So I figured I would stand up, I can walk around, I can do whatever I like, and I'll be a little bit more limber. So, welcome to Story Sundays, the show in which you leave comments in the comments down below asking questions about the zombies storyline, and I answer them in the next week's episode. Pleasure to have you back. I'm going to be jumping into comments today that are mainly revolving around topics that, as I asked for in my video last week, are a little bit more niche and a little bit more kind of unique and ambiguous than the obvious questions like, did Victus survive? Or is the Richtofen's in the classified ending a certain Richtofen's or something like that? Those are very obvious questions. Today, I want to focus on some of the less obvious ones. I'm going to start things off with a comment from one of my members who hit the join button, that's Catmon, who said, "Why is the date of Richtofen's parents' deaths important enough to be added into the chronorium?" Great question. And they go on to say, "I have noticed while playing Blood, the Richtofen's references his mother a lot through the gameplay. It probably means nothing, I just find it odd." Well, I would argue it does not mean nothing, Catmon, and to back that up, I'm actually going to read you an excerpt from an unreleased Jason Blundell interview that I did, in which we actually talk about these very characters. I'll get there in just a second. I want to say one other thing first, though. In my experience playing Blood of the Dead, I haven't actually heard those quotes about his mother that you are referring to. And this links to something that I asked about on Twitter the other day. Basically, normally, when a map comes out, people are able to jump into the game files, rip all the sounds, and then the sounds will be categorized by which character is saying a certain quote. So you'll be able to easily separate out all of the quotes from Takio, Richtofen, Nikolai, Dempsey, and then people make separate videos with all of those quotes, and I sit down and type out every single quote in the game, so I have a resource for myself to read when I'm looking into certain aspects of the zombie storyline, which tells me what the characters have always said at any point in time ever. Now, the thing that sucks about Black Ops 4 is that we can't do that anymore. In-game, the sound files are encrypted or something, they're hashed, I guess, the sound file names, and so we can't get access to that little bit of text that tells us which character's saying what, and so in order to get all the sound files, you would have to manually pick through all of the grunts and groans and ambient noise and things like that in order to actually separate everything out and get to your character quotes, and that would take hours and hours and hours of work, and so no one has done it. No one's got time for that sort of thing. And it means that normally, in this sort of scenario, I would see this quote saying, "I've been playing Blood," and Richtofen's mentioning his mother, and I'd be like, time to access my little quotes book. But I can't, because we don't have the quotes, which sucks. So if you guys could share with me any cool quotes that you have via videos or whatever, that would be great. Because right now, it's just impossible for me to actually get to all of them because we can't get those sound files in the same way we used to. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. On July 17th, 1898, Edward Richtofen's parents die. That is what the chronorium says, that's what the timeline says, and that's pretty much all we know about their death. We don't really know anything more. We do know that a little later on August 11th, 1906, Richtofen begins his studies at Heidelberg, which we learned about in some of the ciphers that I think I solved in Origins, and he's under the tutelage of Dr. Ludwig Maxis. Having lost his parents, Richtofan comes to view Maxis as a father figure. That's a little bit more context around their death, but really not very much at all. And I would initially say, well, I mean, it's Richtofan reading the chronorium, and he's gonna know very well when his parents died. I mean, I'm sure that had a big impact on his personality, on his psyche, on his kind of feeling of being placed in the world, and as such, it makes sense that that sort of thing would come up in the timeline. However, you could also say, well, I mean, Richtofen's parents were never important before, why should they be brought into relevance now? Why should there be any spotlight on them whatsoever? Is it just character building and they've just decided that that's going to be a bit of a better way to flesh out some of his backstory? Maybe, or do they have more significance, and will we hear more about that story in the future? If we go to the Jason Blundell interview, I said, will we ever learn more about Nikolai's brother? And the response that Craig Houston gave me was, who knows? I said, well, you know. And he said, I do know, but and then kind of trailed off, and so I interjected and said, what about his mum? Craig says, again, and so I interject once more, what about Richtofen's dad? And he at that point goes, wow, you'll learn more about all of them, and that's all I'm gonna say. And I'm like, yo, all of them? And Craig says, all of the characters. There's still more layers to explore. Jason jumps in and says, what about his stepsister's aunt? And obviously is being a little bit sarcastic there. Craig says, I'm not commenting on the specifics, of course. Weirdly, there's so many questions that I expect you guys to ask, but you haven't asked yet. Many, many times. So trying to prioritize which things we're gonna go after is a constant and evolving process. Isn't it, Jason? And Jason says, yeah, it certainly is. And Craig says that's where he does his co-writing. And I respond then, and the interview goes on, and it goes for a while, and that's that. So, it was only at the point where I mentioned Richtofen's dad that Craig went, wow. And he does this thing where, like, he's there answering the questions, and then I ask a certain question, or I bring up a certain topic, and he just sort of goes, oh. So, just from that reaction alone, and just from the way that conversation went alone, is there more to Richtofen's parents? Are they really important? Honestly, maybe. There may be something that Craig has written that he's got stored in his head somewhere or down on a page somewhere that is going to end up being a very informative piece of information when it eventually is released into the zombies community about Richtofen and his family history. However, for now, because we only have a little scrap here or there, there's not really anything we can say about them. Do we know who they are? No. That's just the way it's going to be for a while. Really good question though, Catmon. Glad you brought that one up. Next question comes from Chris1275, who says, how does Gersh know the children in GK? Now obviously Gersh is that yellow blob in GK. He's also trapped inside the Casimir mechanism in Ascension, and we also fought alongside him at one point, which is a strange detail that gets overlooked pretty often, but it's apparently something that happened, according to Monty at least. The quote that Chris is referring to here is a GK quote, naturally, and after he's done saying, please release me, I need this to end, he's kind of got this weird, almost suicidal vibe. It's certainly a very bleak vibe when he's floating around because he's been kind of traversing through time and space for so long, and I imagine that gets pretty dull, and without a body and with all the carnage going on around him, I don't really blame Gersh for feeling a bit upset. But one of the things that he ends up saying, which is really interesting, is, where am I? What is happening? It's collapsing. The confluence is occurring. Yuri, the children. Hello? In GK? What? Why is he talking about Yuri and then the children back to back like that, with the confluence occurring and things collapsing around him? I honestly think this is one of the most overlooked, potentially, parts of the story, but also one of the most interesting. The confluence is occurring. That is a merging, a joining. That's some kind of crossover type thing, some kind of encapsulation of one thing into another or something. That's what he's talking about there. The confluence, and then he says Yuri, the children. Is Yuri's story interacting with the children's story in some way? Why does he even know about the children in the first place? I mean, that just shouldn't really be a thing. It shouldn't be at all. Yuri, absolutely. Like, we expect him to be talking about Yuri plenty, but the kids? Not so much. And so to answer your question, Chris, how does Gersh know the children in GK? Honestly, I think that there is no good answer for that right now. I think that you could speculate. I think that you could make a couple guesses about different points in the past where he might have learned about that sort of thing, but really, I feel like it's something that he shouldn't know about, and this is clear evidence that this is something that Jason and Craig, actually, both of them, have planned for a long, long time. Evidently, they knew that they were going to be mixing Gersh in with the children at some point. And that is an interesting piece of information in the context of the fact that GK now no longer happens, and so Gersh is going to have some kind of significance in the story moving forward that we currently cannot predict and don't know how to anticipate or even what it will take any form of. All we know is that they gave us that quote in a map that is now no longer part of the ongoing arc, and so we've got a little bit of information about what could be happening and what other things might be afoot here. We just don't know how it's going to manifest. Nerdbird says, what's the deal with Vril Yaw in BO1? The Vril Yaw are an alien race who essentially come to Earth from outer space, populate it, and then kind of fracture off into various different alien races. They're like a god race type thing on the planet, and then I think the idea is that they live in Agartha, which is the hollow Earth, and that leads to a whole load of conspiracy theories that are still around to this day, to be honest, that the original zombie storyline was largely based on. I mean, all of the discussion of Agartha, the reason that we're going to Shangri-La, all of those sorts of things are due to the fact that we're meant to be able to get into this hollow Earth, and there are kind of secret entrances to it, and in there you have this godlike kingdom, which is the kingdom of the Vril Yaw, or something along those lines at least. It's Vril as a kind of energy source and also as a kind of inspiration that is used in things like the Golden Rod, that is the Vril device, right? And the entire map of Shangri-La is steeped in Vril mythology. One of the entrances to the Hollow Earth is supposed to be in the Himalayas, and I mean, that's where Shang is reported to be set at various points in different kind of places. I mean, Shang's location is always a mystery, right? But reportedly, at least, it's in the Himalayas somewhere, or reportedly it's in an unknown mountain range, or reportedly it's on Mars, whatever you believe. The inspiration, at least, was that it was one of those entrances to the Vril's kingdom. Then, I guess, Jason and Craig decided that they wanted to put their own spin on things, and so they got rid of Vril, and they focused more instead on keepers and apothecons and things like that. They changed the alien influence in the story to be their aliens, which probably ended up being a good change, probably I would say. But that's kind of why they faded out of our focus and why they used to be in our focus so heavily. It's just that our focus is in a different place now. Pedro Cornejo says, MrRoflWaffles, how do you get the Waffle Face on the account? The waffle face that Pedro is referring to is that little waffle icon next to the names of all of my members, and you get the waffle face by hitting the join button. That way, in all my streams, etc., you've got a little waffle badge that changes over time. If you're a member for longer, then you have the waffle badge transforming into like a fiery waffle, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's how you get the waffle face. Yeetus the Fetus, who has the waffle face, says, do the hidden songs in every map have any relevance to the story? Absolutely. In fact, ever since the days of BO1, we've been sitting down and trying to figure out whose perspective certain songs are written from, who's being talked about, what features are being kind of played with, what themes are being explored, etc. I mean, it really hits home when you listen to, for example, the Avenged Sevenfold songs that they've done for zombies, and in one of them, they're literally saying, the endless possibilities controlling 935. Like, they're talking about zombies. They're not just talking about generic kind of spooky horror, ooh, there's a zombie. They're talking about our zombies, Call of Duty zombies, Treyarch zombies. And if you look at Kevin's songs, they're obviously much more on the nose in the fact that they're only about Treyarch zombies. They are fully rich with all sorts of stuff about the story. It's just that it's a lot more metaphor, it's a lot more symbolic, it's a lot more kind of interpretive, as opposed to just a load of lines on the page that say this is what happened in a certain series of events in a certain story arc. I do know for a fact, from the times when I've had the absolute pleasure to interview Kevin Sherwood from Treyarch, I absolutely love that guy's work. I think that he's great and he's really fun to talk to. He has told me on camera in interviews that there's stuff in his pieces that, A, people have just never found, like little Easter eggs here and there that people still haven't uncovered to this day. And also, there's a lot of meaning in there that he feels could be potentially explored further, because, I mean, that's just the nature of the medium, right? It's the same with any song. You can listen to a song about some current event, and it can still be relevant 100 years later because it's a commentary on life. Art really is a reflection of the human experience around us, right? And the same applies here as well. There is absolutely relevance to the story because even if a map is very old, there's always going to be new ways of interpreting things in the context of the new stuff that we have to get more from them. There's one comment I want to leave you with, and it was the last one I read when I was trying to find comments for this episode before I essentially just gave up, because it says, "You've lost most of our community's respect. You should consider backing out of zombies and moving on. Now, honestly, I just don't understand where people like this are coming from, man. And I figured I would squeeze this in on the end here because it's something that I've been seeing a lot, not just about my channel, but also about every single zombies YouTuber in the last sort of month or two, right? Anytime anyone says anything that contains an opinion, people get mad. And I understand someone's insulting your favorite game and saying it's broken because it is. That can be hard to deal with. Except, it's really not the end of the world, man. It's okay for people to not like your favorite game. It's okay for people to moan about the experience that they're having because the experience that they're having is a bad one. You don't need to sit down and keyboard warrior your way through a comment section trying to kind of take the high ground on people 24/7 and say, oh, you've lost my respect. You should consider backing out and moving on. Like, what are you even saying, bro? It's just funny. Like, it's so far from the truth. And it's so far from having any meaning at all that it's just a joke, man. And the reason I'm putting this in here is I've seen it so much in the last month or two. So much everywhere. And I feel like at this point the community is in one of the weirdest places it's ever been because on the one hand, you have people that think that Black Ops 4 is just a meme at this point. They think it's a joke because it's been so broken, it's been so awful, and they are very much on the side of, well, this is trash, so of course I'm going to joke about it being awful. And then on the other side, you have people that, I guess, love the game, which is totally fine. I'm not saying you're not allowed to love the game by any means, but they're head over heels in love with it, and they'll defend it to its very death. And those two groups have never really existed in Treyarch Zombies' community in the way that they exist right now. And it's meant that, essentially, every single time I look at the comment section, there's just people arguing. And it sucks. It just sucks. Like, it's a shame. I absolutely recognize that I've contributed to it in the sense that I've posted about my negative opinion because I'm posting about my opinion. I've been honest with you guys when I've been positive for the last 5 years. Hell, for the last 10 years, what am I even saying? I've been doing this 10 years now. I've been honest with you then, and I've got to stay honest with you now. And it's just weird to me that the community's in such a state now where it's just so common to see people absolutely going at each other's necks and like trying to dig up dirt on people, trying to expose people, like all of that. It's just like, why? Why do you need to go there? Why can't you just leave it alone? I don't know. I really don't know. It just baffles me, man. But I've seen a lot of it, and I mean, I figured I'd say something. On that note, I think I'm actually going to take a day off next week for Story Sundays. There's not going to be an episode next Sunday. If we get a DLC this Tuesday, just out of the blue, then I'll probably post a members-only video and get some comments from those guys just so I can squeeze out an episode and not take the day off. But as of right now, my plan is to just try and get a little bit of a distance from the comments section and relax a little bit, I suppose. Christmas is coming up. It's meant to be a happy time. It's meant to be a festive time. It's meant to be a holiday. And it's kind of hard to get in that kind of spirit when you're also reading a YouTube comment section every day trying to find comments for a new video. It can just be pretty rough, man. So for the sake of my brain and my sanity, I'm going to take next week off. Hopefully you guys understand. I'll be posting loads of other videos though. It's just not the Story Sundays one specifically. Thanks for watching though. Also, my merch design that I've been working on for months is done. And I need to decide now when to release it. Should I release it this week? Should I release it tomorrow? Or should I wait until after Christmas? What do you think? If I release it on Tuesday, for example, I don't think there'll be enough time for orders to all arrive before Christmas, so that might play into when you think would be the best time to release it, but it's ready to go now. I think it looks freaking awesome. I'm really excited to show you guys it. Just need to know when I'm going to do the campaign, because it's going to be a limited one. There's going to be limited numbers of these things. So let me know what you think. I've been MrRoflWaffles. Thanks for watching as always. Leave a like. Hope you all have a good day, even if I've lost your respect. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.